The Altadena Library District acknowledges our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Gabrielino Tonga peoples. We commit to learning, educating, and informing our staff and the residents of Altadena about the Gabrielino peoples, present and past. So we'll start off that way. So you guys will get plunged into this wonderful workshop in a minute. So I'll just let Carla and social people chime in and get you going. Let me tell you about some of the upcoming stuff. So first, welcome back. This is a part of Carla and my season, our year-one season of readings and workshops. And we go forward after today to a couple of other interesting things. We hope you will come through and participate. So on the 31st at 4:30 p.m. in this room, our co-sponsor, Poets and Writers, will host a literary roundtable. And Carl and I will talk about our season and maybe share a couple points. But it's an opportunity for the writing community in our region to come together, ask questions, complain, critique each other, critique the systems, whatever you want to do. It's an opportunity for a robust conversation. So we hope you'll come because we're very excited that Poets and Writers, which has already supported the Laureate program in the past, is one doing it again and helping us to support poets who we bring in as guests. But also coming up this far, so to speak, you know, and really seeing us as part of the larger Southern California literary community, which is super important because it's a rich one. It's a robust one. Then in February, we actually have two events on February 4 in the main library room at 7 p.m., almost like a nightclub vibe. I will be reading with 3 musicians and with 2 other poets. And I think we have flyers, but and we really are encouraging everybody to sign up on the library's mailing list. We are so grateful to have the professional staff of the library really work with us. They create these marvelous flyers and they send everything out on a regular basis through their mailing list. So we really hope if you're not on the library's mailing list, please join us. You can either walk up to the desk or you can go online and follow various things. Okay, so February 4, I'll be reading, we call it the Inspiration House Poetry Choir. Then later on that month, February 25 at 11 a.m. in this room, Carla will be featured with poets Romaine Washington, Noriko Nakata, and Social will come back and instead of being your workshop guide, she'll just throw down as a poet and be a part of a wonderful chorus of poetry. But that's a special feature with Carla as showing off her stuff so that we can be coming in and party with her. In fact, the Black History Month of February includes a marvelous range of stuff that the library is sponsoring. Please check out again, stay on the mailing list, but also the flyers that's here. As we move into March, we have a really special event on the 21st. We will be inviting 3 poetry couples. These are partners / married couples who are also very fine poets. We'll have William Archila and Lori Bedikian, Terry Wolverton and Yvonne Estrada, and Ahmad Johnson and Shireen Sherrard. So that'll be March 21 at 6 p.m. here. And then we'll close our first season in the library's main floor In April, we are poetry and cookies, and that'll feature readings by poets who contribute to the Altadena poetry. All right, so.
Hi everyone, so glad to see you here. We are really honored to have Lisa here to teach this workshop. An incredible poet, and you'll get to hear some of her poetry on February 25th. Hopefully come. And today, just teaching a workshop. I've been gifted with taking a workshop before with poetry and actually coming up with poems that were later published. So just very inspirational in so many ways. There's a longer bio on the table, but I can read brief bio. So Lisa was the daughter of Mexican immigrants and author of Posada, Offerings of Witness and Refuge, and his publications 2016. Her second collection, Incantation, Love Poems for Battle Site, is forthcoming from Mouthful Press in fall of 2023. Yay!
Yay! Thank you.
And her poem Battlegrounds was featured at Academy of American Poets Poem a Day. Undine's Poetry Unbound and the anthology Poetry Unbound, 50 poems to open your world, W.W. Morgan. She is a director of Women Who Submit, and if anyone would, maybe you can say a little bit about that too.
Sure.
Yeah. Women Who Submit and teaches poetry and creative writing at Antioch University, MFA, and UCLA Extension. Inspired by her identity, she works to cultivate love and comfort in chaotic times. No need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to the Altadena Library for writers for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you all. As Carla mentioned, or somebody asked earlier, I'm actually local, not to Altadena, but I'm from San Gabriel. So, a lot of times people ask me, where are you from? And I say San Gabriel, and they go, oh, San Gabriel Valley. And I'm like, yes, but San Gabriel in the San Gabriel Valley. So, I'm excited. I always love doing something local in the SGB. So thank you, Carla, for inviting me to do this. I'm also the director of Women Who Submit. It's over 10 years old now. It's an organization that helps women and non-binary writers submit their work for publication. If you want to talk about these things, I'll be hanging out after and we can chat, and I'm happy for that. So thank you for having me. We're going to be talking about form. We're going to do a lot of writing. So if you have something to write with, if it's your computer or pen and paper, whatever you feels most comfortable for you, we will be doing a lot of prompts. I'm going to start with a prompt. So these are just, one of the things I always feel that writing is really hard. I know who agrees with me. For me, I have this theory that it's different from other art forms because a writer, we need to create our own material. It's not outside of ourselves. So it's not an instrument that we can tune and practice. It's not, so it's like, so we have to create the material, which is part of the issue. Like we can't just get out our paints and our brush and just kind of start. So what we're going to do right now, this starting prompt is just a prompt to get some material on the table, just get some clay out on the table. That's how I like to think about it. So you're not going to be asked to share what we're starting with here. This is just to whatever's the first things that are coming to your brain, just write them down. And then there are also, the thing about form that we're going to kind of talk about is that forms are helpful for writing about difficult topics. So I am going to ask some things about like emotions, like hard emotions, right? So try not to think about your language as you're doing this. Try not to think about like, oh, this doesn't sound good, because that's not what this is about right now. This is just, again, about throwing a bunch of clay on the table. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, and then you'll have 1 minute to write down whatever's the first things that are coming to your mind. And again, try not to think about language at all. This is not, you won't even be asked to read it. Okay, so you ready? Yeah, okay. So the first question is, when you hear the word home, where does your mind go? When you hear the word home, where does your mind go? And the second part of this, what's the landscape of this place? What is the landscape of this place? 1 minute. All right, hands up. We're gonna have a new question. We're gonna do 5 of these. That was 1%. Okay. Who is a person you miss? Like right now, someone who's not here. Who is a person you miss? What's an object of clothing you remember them wearing? What's an object of clothing you remember them wearing? Okay, hands up. New prompt. What is a time you can remember weeping? What is a time you can remember weeping? What's a detail you can remember from your environment? What's a detail you can remember from your environment? All right, stop where you are. Finish up whatever sentence you're on. 2 more. And if your mind goes somewhere else, that is okay. There is no right and wrong answers here, right? I give you a prompt, it's just to get you going. If your mind is like, you didn't want to think about weeping, you wanted to think about laughing, that is more than okay. Go wherever your mind wants to be. 2 more. When was the last time you remember being crazy angry? When was the last time you remember being crazy angry? Where in your body did you feel it? Where in your body did you feel it? All right, and finish up that sentence. Here's our last question. What's something you wanted to write about, but you felt you weren't ready, or you felt you weren't allowed? What's something you wanted to write about, but you felt you weren't ready, or you felt you weren't allowed? Okay, finish up that sentence, those last thoughts. And how are we feeling? Feeling like we're starting to get warmed up? You want to shake out your hand a little bit because we're about to write again? Good. Okay, so we're still working the clay, right? We're still kind of prepping our clay. So we're gonna write again. But this time, what I want you to do is so now you have 5 starters, right? It's not a poem yet. It's just some thoughts on a page. I want you to pick one of them, whichever one is really calling to you right now. And what we're gonna do is just free write for 5 minutes about that topic. So this is how I like to get started, because if I just say, I'm gonna write about this thing, right? That's like the surefire way to not write about the thing. So, let's start with 5. Okay, now we have 5 topics on the page. Now let's look at one. So for 5 minutes, choose one of those topics that you just kind of wrote some notes on and free write about it for 5 minutes. Try not to let your pen come up, right? Try to write the whole time. If you can't think of something to write, you can say, I can't write until you can think of something. And again, this is just the clay, right? We have not gotten to the poem yet. We're just putting clay on the table. All right, any questions? And again, we won't be sharing this yet. So don't feel any nervousness or anxiety around, oh, I might have to read this. You won't. Okay, so 5 minutes, go ahead. Okay, so you can finish up what you're working on. Would anyone like to share any thoughts they were having, not deriving, but like any thoughts you're having about how that free write went? Any barriers you were coming up against with the questions, with trying to expand on that? Any thoughts?
I like that the first part, there were no expectations. And then little by little, you develop a little more sharing sort of thing. And then the fact that we choose, it is free will choose. Yeah. And still there are no expectations on that.
Excellent, thank
But
you.
it helps us write more and more. Or not as like. You fabulous, right?
Yeah, in 2 minutes. Be fabulous in 2 minutes. Go.
Well,
Yes, thank you.
I'm right.
Right, because then we let go of all those little rules in our heads, like, oh, it has to sound like this, and it has to do that, right?
Pretty word.
Yeah. You get so stuck on that. Thank you. Anyone else? Was it difficult? Was it difficult to write? I mean, I picked, the prompts I picked were to try to get to some maybe difficult topics. Was it difficult to write about, or was there any time where you didn't want to?
I think having setting, so the one that I picked, like, it was very fun. And you said, remember, you don't put in the fire. And that prompt to put myself in a setting and focus on the specifics and focus on the details of what's actually there is extremely.
Cool.
The best start.
And thank you for that. Over here.
Oh, just that, because they were really specific and we only had a minute and then also in 5, we just couldn't think about it and just did it.
Yeah.
And like, I think that it's always the blank page, right? Like no matter how many years. You know, you're writing the blank pages like.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, you can't.
yeah, you just gotta do it. What are you gonna do, right? Good or bad, right? You know, or neutral.
Yeah. Thank you. And then also to come back to what you're saying, I'm glad you picked up on that because, you know, the first question was like an emotional question. The second question was like about your body or the space or, you know, so I was trying to find, or an object, you know, someone's clothing. So I was trying to also, again, about building the material, I'm trying to give you also something of something to hold on to, you know, to help you kind of start building. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. Oh, what happened there? You have signed,
Well, it's still running.
Oh, okay.
But
I'll just click OK. Yes.
someone did comment about the prompt, like what their thought of it. It was from that woman. She said that she loved the prompt and that it brought her to her childhood neighborhood. The barrier is that the memory is in Spanish and she doesn't know the words in English to write about what she's remembering.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and hello from out there in LA. Wonderful. Okay, so this talk is on form. Form is the shape of the poem, right? And so what we're gonna get to and think about is that the subject of your poem can often dictate what your form is. And so some people have, I know I have, a lot of anxiety around like classic forms because I was told early on, you can't rhyme in a poem if you don't know meter, and I will never know how to do meter. I will never know how to create that rhythm. So I was like, oh, I'm not allowed. And so I just instantly was like, forget it, I can't do it. But, you know, it's not true. We can play with them however we want. And sometimes a classic form like a sonnet, which we will look at, has its purpose and has its space. So whatever your subject is, it's about finding the right container, right? Does it need to be a classic form? Does it need to be a repeating form, like a sestina? Do I just make it up? Is it going to be free? And that's what we're kind of looking at. The other thing about this is that, like sometimes when you have a fixed form or repeating form, classic form, they have a lot of rules. And those rules can be good tools for talking about difficult topics, because what I kind of think about it is like trying to look at a solar eclipse, right? We all want to look at it, but if we look at it straight on, we're going to injure our eyes, right? So how do we do it? We have to look through shadows. We have to create shadow boxes. When I was a kid, my dad was a welder, so he put on his big welding, mask on me so I could look at the sun. And so difficult topics are kind of like that. If we want to go straight to the thing, if we want to go straight to the bruise and put our thumb on it, it hurts, right? So what else can we do? Forms are a good way, a good tool to kind of get around it and be able to talk about it without injuring ourselves. And so here's a video from Natalie Diaz. You have, how do I? Yes, okay. You have handouts. And so if you want to read Natalie's poem as she's reading it, it's in your handout. Everyone has them on the table beneath the flyer. So it's on the like 4th page, My Brother at 3 a.m. So if you want to look at how the form looks and read it on the page, it's there for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
My Brother at 3 a.m. This is a pantoum. And so she's going to talk a little bit about what form, how she uses form, and then she's going to read this poem. How do I? Oh, there we go.
So form, I read triolets in the very first poem, and this is a pantoum. So for me, form helps me kind of write about emotional things. So instead of being overly emotional, I can use form and focus on an image and repeat and repeat and repeat and until I discover something new about it, instead of just, trying to paste my emotions onto the page. So this is a pantoum. My Brother at 3 a.m. This was the feature poem, so. Feature poem, ding, ding, ding. So, my brother at 3 a.m. He sat cross-legged, weeping on the steps when Mom unlocked and opened the front door. Oh God, he said, oh God, he wants to kill me, Mom. When Mom unlocked and opened the front door at 3 a.m., she was in her nightgown. Dad was asleep. He wants to kill me, he told her, looking over his shoulder. 3 a.m. and in her nightgown, Dad asleep. What's going on? She asked. Who wants to kill you? He looked over his shoulder. The devil does. Look at him over there. She asked, what are you on? Who wants to kill you? The sky wasn't black or blue, but the green of a dying night. The devil, look at him over there. He pointed to the corner house. The sky wasn't black or blue, but the dying green of night. Stars had closed their eyes or sheathed their knives. My brother pointed to the corner house. His lips flickered with sores. Stars had closed their eyes or sheathed their knives. Oh God, I can see the tail, he said. Oh God, look. Mom winced at the sores on his lips. It's sticking out from behind the house. Oh God, see the tail, he said. Look at the goddamn tail. He sat cross-legged, weeping on the front steps. Mom finally saw it, a hellish vision. My brother. Oh God, she said.
Okay, so is anyone seeing any correlation between, so she chose the pantoum, and the last page of your pamphlet shares kind of the rules of the poems we will see today. So if you want to know more about a pantoum, there's some guiding rules at the back if you want to try one for yourself. The main thing is that 2 lines from one stanza repeat into the next stanza, and it keeps going. I kind of think of it as a hammer. I kind of think this is a good form for something that you want to really hammer out of your, like maybe something that just won't leave your brain and you're just like, let me hammer it out. Any thoughts on the correlation between the pantoum form and the subject, which is, her brother's addiction, this very emotional moment between her mother, brother, and her. Any thoughts on that? And what she said about how she uses form? Yes. Yes.
The repetition to me feels like worry. Like you kind of coming around the same kind of worries and thoughts.
Nice, thank you. So we're getting the emotion without saying the emotion, right? And I think that's like something to think about. Like if you're angry, like instead of saying I'm angry or I'm worried, what's a form that can kind of help you to bring that out? And here?
Oh, I was just gonna say how powerful it was to hear her reading. I've seen this poem before, but hearing her reading is just incredible, yeah. And I also love seeing the format on the page, the way she's indented the lines. It just fits in a beauty.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. The beauty, right? Sometimes we're trying to write something difficult, but if we give ourselves some rules, if we try, we're like, okay, I have to do this thing and this thing, then it becomes about the beauty of it. And so then we don't have to look at it directly anymore, right? It's like now it's like, oh, well, now I'm playing with words and I'm trying to make something on the page, and so it kind of alleviates some of the pressure of the painful thing, I think. That's my theory here. Yes.
She also builds a lot of tension. And she starts with something sort of skeptical. And really, you can't wait to have the kitchen spiral through. You're also waiting to see what's actually happening here. Who is he actually talking about? What's actually happening? So your discovery is at the end of it and mother's own discovery.
Love, beautiful. So like she created suspense. She created suspense within the form. Thank you. Okay, going back here. I was like, am I gonna show them a pantoum, all these different things? And then I was like, I'll just stick with the Shakespearean sonnet because again, maybe because I also had that experience early on in my writing career where somebody said you can't do that because you don't know how to do XYZ. And I love sonnets. I love to try them. I don't think I've written a successful one yet, but they're fun to try. And also I like to pick a sonnet because there are a lot of rules. So then there are a lot of things to kind of try to understand and pick and choose from. Because that's what we're doing here. We don't have to write a sonnet. I'm not expecting anyone to write a sonnet. It's like, I want to learn the sonnet, talk about its elements, and then pick and choose what we want, right? So just some rules about the Shakespearean sonnet. It's 14 lines. It's written in iambic pentameter. So that means that every line is 10 syllables. And then those 10 syllables are split up into 2 meters of 2 syllables that say unstressed stress. So da-dum, 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 which is the thing I cannot do. And I don't know the different types of meters. And then there's a rhyme scheme. So the last words are rhyming in this pattern, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. And then there's a rhyming couplet at the end. And I picked this I thought this was kind of a classical Renaissance container here. I thought it felt classical to me. Okay, so here's sonnet 18. This is also in your packet if you want to look at it. And so, I'm just going to read it really quickly. I love Shakespeare for many reasons, and that's a whole other talk. So, but here's sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf has all too short a date. Sometimes you hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim. And every fair from fair sometime decline, by chance or nature's changing course sunshine. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when eternal line to time thou rowest. So long as men can see, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long as this and this gives life to be. So just, 10 syllables, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? 10 syllables. You can hear the meter in the words like shall I, thou art, right? The last line I feel like the clearest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see. So we're getting that da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. And then you can see the day rhymes with May, temperate with date, shines with climb. So we're, these are the rules, right? The other things I like about a sonnet is I feel like they're a rhetorical paragraph. So like the paragraphs you wrote in middle school, where you had to have your topic sentence and then your examples and explanation and then your closing sentence. A sonnet is a lot like that to me. There's the rhetorical question at the beginning. Shall I compare you to a summer's day? So we are comparing the subject to a summer's day. And then he tells us why it can't work. She's more beautiful. And then that's the first four lines. And then the next 4 lines are about how, well, also summer isn't perfect because it dies and it ends. And so I don't like this comparison at all. Right. And then it changes, but he changes his mind. But you know what? You're not gonna die. You're gonna live forever. And then the final close up of that is because this poem lives on. So I really like a sonnet because of that. It's like, here's the idea. I'm gonna tell you all the different ways this is happening and not happening. And then my point. Again, I really like Shakespeare. I could talk about that. Okay. Any thoughts on this? On the sonnet?
Well, it's addressing a person,
Mhm.
and not as the total focus you.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you, while the other poem is not addressing a person, it was telling a story.
Ah, yes.
And so this is saying, you, me, and there is something behind it that he wants from her, probably.
Ah,
Right.
right. I always think of those Carpe Diem poems, right? That's always like, oh, this guy was just like, knew he was cool because he was a poet and trying to get the girl. They're like, classic rock stars, like old school rock stars. Okay, so we're gonna try another prompt. So we're gonna take out the clay that we started, and I want you to try a sonnet. We don't have a lot of time. Again, no one's expecting a perfect sonnet. Maybe you just try 4 lines. Maybe you just try a couplet. Maybe you just try 1 line. Maybe you want to try meter. I don't know. Whatever part of the sonnet you want to try, we're gonna. We're taking the material you wrote.
Yeah.
We're taking the material you've started with and you are shaping it into the sonnet. Again, at the back of your pamphlet are the rules. Shakespearean sonnet rules at the back here. So you can take a look at that. So we'll do that for a few minutes. Are people good with that? See if you can shape your clay into a sonnet. Or at least start. Here, we can finish up what we're working on. That was 10 minutes to write a classic, forever living, immortal sonnet. So, again, there is no expectations here. The idea is that as we try these different forms, that maybe what comes from that is a line you like, or a start to something, that you're going to discover parts of your poem by trying out these different forms. That's what we're really trying to get to. So does anybody have like a line or some lines to share that you'd like to read? Yeah, wonderful. So go for it.
So swiftly have a pause on life and breath. So harsh the winds of fluidly the world. So short the time between the birth and death. So cold a hand that shuts your distance away.
Beautiful, beautiful, clearly not new to meter form. So what was that first line again? So some
The hammer falls on life and breath.
loves that.
Yeah.
So harsh, the winds, brutal winter weather. So short the time between your birth and death. So hold the hand that shuts your trusting soul.
I love the rhythm of the first, there's clearly meter in that. And the rhythm of that hammer, it feels like it's coming down, like it feels like it's swinging. So that was really cool. Thank you. Did you want it? Did I see a hand? Okay.
I didn't even try to do the meter, you got the meter down. Present. Hawaii, you are a blessing and a curse, a paradise of a paradise. No home will ever be home to you the way you are. All places will be heaven.
Beautiful as well. I'm just like there. Anybody else, any thoughts on that? How did it go? Yes.
Yeah, I was writing about a difficult subject and it really did help thinking about that one. I have the same thing too. I hope they do not remember too much. The bad, exhaustion, anger, the sorrow. I hope the memories of joy and such bring balance, truth, and love for tomorrow.
Thank you for sharing that. That first line is so beautiful. Yes.
Oh, yeah, comment from Jennifer Chang, who said that the rhythm sonic form is pushing for other ways of saying things like solving a mood is cute.
Yes, love that. I kind of think about it that way. Like, once you start thinking about, oh, this is a puzzle I have to solve,
Yeah.
it kind of frees up your mind a little bit, right? And allows you to get to those places. Yes, one more.
If I could just comment on where I got stuck with the part with the rhyming at the end of the line. But then I ended up like hardly getting anywhere because I was like, oh, well, that doesn't rhyme. There's no word I could think of in the whole world that rhymes with that ending. And so then I was really stuck. Yeah. So,
Yes. Well, thank you. And that I feel is a good segue to where we're going next, because we don't really, again, like a teacher once told me, you can't rhyme because you can't meter. And so then it's like, oh, boom, well, now I don't flaw, right? But the truth is that these tools these parts are here for us to play with. Shakespeare, this is originally an Italian form, right? That Shakespeare then changed. And now the Shakespearean sonnet is an English form. That then an American is going to do something else with. So there's nothing wrong with breaking these rules.
right.
I have a question.
Oh
So-
wait, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, so I've been thinking, 'cause I'm bilingual Spanish English and I was a Spanish major, so I learned poetry forms in Spanish that I write in English, and I think about like breaking those forms, like bringing in, I feel like sometimes I bring in Spanish grammar in my English.
Right.
And so it makes me, I don't know, like, that's why I think for me, the rhythm is really hard in a sonnet, like, I can get the end lines. But the rhythm just always, I don't know, like, I
So, like,
wonder,
what-
I mean, would it be, with an Italian form? Hopefully, I don't know, I'm just talking.
Yeah,
But-
or maybe it's
Yeah.
that you're taking your Spanish language, the rhythms of your Spanish language,
Right,
and adapting it with the Shakespearean, and then it becomes something new.
right,
That's where we're, like
Yeah.
thinking about it that way. I'm gonna move forward. So this is Marilyn Nelson is she writes children's poetry. She has a book, an illustrated book called A Wreath for Emmett Till. Emmett Till being the young man who was killed in the South, and I forget what year it was, I apologize. She wrote this, it's a crown of sonnets, so that's 15 sonnets. And the last line of the first sonnet becomes the first line of the next sonnet, and you work through the sonnet like that until you get to the 14th. And on the 15th, all the first lines become each line of the 15th poem. And so it's a really beautiful book. I recommend finding it. It's an illustrated children's book honoring the life of Emmett Till. And so I want to it's in your packet so you can see it again. And so there's sonnets, right? But notice that she doesn't follow all the rules, that she picks and chooses here. So if you want to find A Wreath for Emmett Till, oh, it's the second page. A Wreath for Emmett Till, so you can read with her, along with her.
I am a Black poet who will not remain silent while this nation murders Black people. We have a right to be angry. I'm reading a section of my poem, A Wreath for Emmett Till. Emmett Till's name still catches in my throat, like syllables waylaid in a stutterer's mouth. A 14-year-old stutterer in the South to visit relatives and to be taught the family's ways. His mother had finally bought that White Sox cap. She'd made him swear an oath to be careful around white folks. She told him the truth of many a Mississippi anecdote. Some white folks have blind souls. In his suitcase, she packed dungarees, t-shirts, underwear, and comic books. She'd given him a note for the conductor, waved to his chubby face, wondered if he'd remember to brush his hair. Her only child, a body left to bloat. Your only child, a body thrown to bloat, mother of sorrows, of justice denied. Surely you must have thought of suicide, seeing his gray flesh, chains around his throat. Surely you didn't know you would devote the rest of your changed life to dignified public remembrance of how Emmett died, innocents slaughtered by the hands of hate. If sudden loving light proclaimed you blessed, would you bow your head in humility, your healed heart overflow with gratitude? Would you say yes, like the mother of Christ? Or would you say no to your destiny, mother of a boy martyr, if you could?
So that's Marilyn Nelson reading from A Wreath for Emmett Till, which is a crown of sonnets. Any thoughts on this? On the sonnet form? Like which rules is she keeping? Which rules is she sticking to? 14 lines, yes. Yeah.
She does rhyme,
Mhm.
not every.
So there's a rhyme scheme, but it's not, it's different. What is she not using? What is she choosing to exclude in the rules? The rhyming couplet, right, yeah. And no, back here? Was there someone? 10 syllables, yes, so we've let go of the 10 syllables. And then, the topic, how is the sonnet, we're talking about form and containers for our subject. How is this sonnet speaking to the life of Emmett Till, the remembrance of Emmett Till? What is the connection there? Any thoughts on that?
She's able to bring in details about the nature of it, like that last line, the child body left to float, like and the chains that she does it buried within another form. It's almost more than a book of intentions, surprisingly.
Because we get caught up in the beauty of the language and then the ugly.
The ugly,
yeah.
And it honors, I think it really honors both Emmett and his mother. It's a lot of dignity, which she tried.
Thank you for that.
It's a wonderful story to children who identify with songs that have a suitcase and a suitcase, and then Christ and marriage.
Right, so those details that, he was the child. And so those details about his childhood. And Mary?
Sounds like, she mentioned the idea of the train. And that is like a journey. And the train has a living So, got that rhythm and reliable rhythm. Like a train, you can't jump off it if you wanted to, you know. So you have to stay,
Yeah,
command your attention,
yeah,
the way the lines and really. Almost sometimes they lose track on the song. And you get very narrative. And, I think the sonic help to prolong the speed of a narrative tone. The narrative tone would be all the way down to the end. And the air. Just like Emma tells mother, making you look at them. Just slowing it down. And we have to, you know, we can't go through this tone quickly. We get to the end. We have to stick with it. And it's her mother did, right? Here it is. A long line of water coming through. And it's got that quality of storytelling, but slowing it down deliberately so you have to stick with it.
yes, the slowing down, the intentionality of it. It's an extended poem, right? It's not one sonnet, it's 15 sonnets. And then the royalness of it, it's a crown of sonnets. She calls it a wreath for Matilda, and we're thinking about, you know, I think also like the Greek, what is it called? What are they- the laurels, right? Also, crown, you know, yes. And also the wreaths at the funerals.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's an honoring there too. And so the extended form is part of that, yeah.
I find it fascinating how she uses this revered, very old, very English, very white form to talk about this topic. And I'm wondering whether it's very intentional in terms of going. I'm speaking to you white folks who sometimes lack the soul. And the way I'm going to reach you, and the way you're going to hear me, is because I'm going to write it. So I think that's powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. It's okay.
So I think the part that really touched me the most is how in section 4, it's very intimate. As if she is written in the same room and is seeing every detail of what's happening with her and then she goes visit his family. And then in 4, in 5, she begins to step away and put her in doubt. And there's more talking to the mother and what. And I didn't have it as the whole thing, but I have a feeling maybe something that happens to transition in the longer piece. I don't know, how you put it. I love the tone and after that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I definitely suggest, and maybe they have a copy here. I was trying to find my copy at home and I couldn't find it. I was like, well, maybe they have it in the library. But I definitely suggest checking it out. It's a really beautiful collection of sonnets. Yes.
I want to say one thing. Yvonne Estrada has written a crown of sonnets called My Name on Tony Jordan's book. And it's really amazing. It's all about Los Angeles. So if you have a chance to take a look at it, I know she reads other poems, but that particular book is amazing. The crown of sonnets about Los Angeles.
And then over here.
Well, I just like to reflect. But as a Black person, I think that one cannot take for granted that you know the story. As a Black person, I have I know the story, but I know many African American Black person just don't know this story. And this is a way to draw them in as well. It's not only for white folks. It's all I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you for that. I also think, you know, like, why did she pick an English, this English form? I think as a, like in my writing, I might take something like that because it's like, I get to have this too. I get to
Yeah.
honor my people, my people like this too, you know, so there's like an ownership of that. For me, that's what I think.
This is very political and a call to activism and for the mothers to speak out. And it's brutal. I mean, she said, catches in my throat. Body left to bloat. Chains around his throat. That's very brutal. Violent against this child, right? And then also calling women to assert yourself against the stereotype of being a passive. I love the Blessed Mother, I do, but it is a passive image. The way she accepts Jesus coming off the cross and bearing, you know, acceptance. And here, would you bow your head in humility? Would you say yes, like the mother of Christ? How, you know? Or would you say no to your destiny, the mother of a born martyr, if you could? So it's like calling us to action. If you could,
Yeah.
Would you be passive or would you do something? Do something.
Thank you. Yeah, if I do this again, I'm like, okay, I'll need more time. More time, like less poems than focus on, you know, this poem. I think we can continue this conversation. And thank you so much for everyone who's shared. I am gonna move forward. Thinking about this, I go to poets.org, y'all go there and listen to Poem a Day. One of the things I think about with, like, you know, again, going back to one of my, you know, origin stories of a teacher telling me I couldn't do something, is that how we feel, a lot of times we feel that poetry, and especially classic poetry, is something that is away from us and something that is kind of foreign. But, you know, poetry is like one of the oldest forms of art, and most writing you know, from like Romans and the Greeks was written in poetry form. So it was like normal, right? Like you would see a play, it was in poetry. You would go to a speech, it was poetry. Everything was poetry. And so now we've kind of gotten away from rhythm and meter, but it was every day, right? It was just normal. So I like to encourage people to like listen to the poems, right? And I think Poem a Day is a great place to just listen to poems. I love when a poet wants to read to me. If anyone ever wants to read me poetry, it's like my happiest day. So I went there doing this activity, thinking about what I wanted to do. I went there and I found this poem by, it's the next page, by Ura Joan Noel. And I've never heard of this form before, but I thought it was a really beautiful poem, and it's a cinquain. So cinquain means 5, so it's a 5-line stanza, and it has a syllabic pattern. It's a derivative, it's an American derivative of the haiku and the tanka. So the lines are, first line is 2 syllables, and 4 syllables, and 6 syllables, and 8 syllables, and next 2. And you can do series, and you can, you know, mess with them in those ways. But I kind of liked it because it's kind of like a mini sonnet if you're only looking at the lines and the syllables, right? So just thinking about numbers of lines and syllables, we still have a form, but it's a mini form. And so we're going to listen to Ura Joan read his poem. And we're also going to listen to the about. I love Poem a Day because they always ask the poet, well, what's this poem about? And they tell you that. So we're going to listen to the poem, then the about, and then, you know, think about why did he choose this form?
This is Ura Joan Noel reading Cinquains written for a tropical storm. To live now is to speak the language of the tree, topple the long expressway at night. Perhaps to walk the streets that you have always walked, until tired dust gets distilled in your lungs and turns to ashes of infinite radiance that connect you to ancestors twice dead. Their hands, oceans as gray as fallen jaguars, except the flowers in their eyes still bloom. Let your words improvise, stories, bodies, forms, and habitable words the size of marks on pages, provisional. These diacritics of our deepest solitude become slow fire, since we are being born 1,000 times a day in the hands of each being that embraced us from its makeshift bed, murmuring something like the wisdom of a planet as it burns, the carved wood of the dream and its antipodes, the song of fluorocarbons and roosters, nature's border regions, the stone sternum of night, or the blaze of the collective neuron currents that come and go. The light goes on and off. The neighbors ride while carrying what looks to be sediment of civilizations like ours that survive in the warble of birds. Ancient dinosaurs nest in digital gardens with no trace other than the sea turtles smile as reflected in the turbulent waters, signifying foam, or the drool that drips from my universe to yours, ambient, amber, necklace of archipelagos broken after the last downpour, the prolepsis of song with no safeguards other than the curtains that still cover the doors that lead to balconies from which you can see port cities larger than the world, smaller than the dewdrops of your breath, where all possible ships anchor away. About this poem. Written in my native Puerto Rico in summer of 2022, this poem attempts an eco-poetic reflection on islandness. It was surrealist formalism. As part of a longer work in conversation with a range of poets from the Caribbean and its diasporas. In Mesezer, Miguel de Burgos, Carpetien, Victor Hernández Cruz, Tomás Brathwaite, Nicole Cecilia Delgado, Soledad Rios, Eduardo Grisant, Pedro Pietri, etc. With its slashes and minimal punctuation, the poem seeks to turn the syllabic form of the syncane 24682 into an oceanic vernacular attuned to archipelagos of breath.
So that is Dean Cain, written during the political storm. Any thoughts on the form and its subject? How did he change the form?
I love how he used the form, but then created the form by using line breaks and the backslashes. It's beautiful. It really kind of looks like rain as well. The way rain falls, storm.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I love, yeah, exactly, right? There's the form. And he's following it, but he's also not following it because he's decided that it's gonna look different. Have you ever read a poem with backslashes and gone like, why is that there? So I, that's what I like knowing this one. So yeah, thank you for that. And that's kind of the point, right? We don't have to follow the rules. We can use them, we can mess with them, we can change them, we can make them fit what our intentions are. And then he wanted it to sound like the ocean. And then you said it looks like raindrops, but then it's still water, right? I thought about water. Yes.
Storms. The words way you choose, as chosen words, very sonic, lots of sonics in this. And it's like the ocean and like the storm. So that the words like tumble, the sound of the word tumbled over themselves, one after another. It reminds me of speaking about how to deal with the way mind thinks in the language. He does that when he speaks later. And he's speaking English with English in his vernacular, Puerto Rico. You can hear the way those words individually. So he is, in a way, writing language in English, which is his form of his English. And it's wonderful. Once I heard him speak, I thought, oh, there it is. He's doing it again, but he's not. He's just speaking in his rhythm, you know?
Right, beautiful, thank you, yes, and I feel like that's kind of what I'm trying to get to in this talk, one of the things anyway, is that, sure, we're looking at, Italian forms and old English forms and things that come from the Greeks or whatever, right, but how do you take that and honor your language, your background, your vernacular, your landscape, and create something new? Something that is all of yours and honors your subject, right? Cool, so thank you for that. We're gonna do a prompt again. So, are we ready to write? So we looked at, Marilyn Nelson, she was using the form, but she also made it her own. Here, this poet, again, is using a form, but he makes it his own. That's the wrong place, okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so here's your writing prompt. I'm gonna give you a choice this time. Option 1, pick and choose 1 and 2 rules from the sonnet and rewrite your poem. Again, so that's why we started with the material building at the beginning, because we were gonna keep trying to see what. Option 2 is try your poem as a syncane, or that could be 1 5 lines, or it could be a series of 5 lines. You could try his version with the slashes, or you can make up your own, right? And then option 3, make up your own rule. This can be a rule based on syllables, lines, or rhyme scheme, just because that's what we've been looking at. You could create other rules, right? You could say every line has to start with the letter A, whatever, but because we've been looking at lines and syllables and rhyme, make up a rule about that. Any questions? So again, same poem, same material, now you're reshaping in one of these 3 ways. And just a reminder that the back page in your handouts has all the rules if you want to look at them. 7 minutes.
I'm loving this.
That's good.
Not think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And if you even do the same one, then you turn the sonnet, really the same one. So the one you turn the sonnet, that's it, that, when you reshape it.
Yeah.
So they can do like, yeah, like we can throw it from them. Yeah. Yeah. This was the last thing. Also, people, I don't claim to be like the formalist. I know these things. I just know how to manipulate that. Or I just like to manipulate them. And the idea is that it was the thing you did your free write on became a sonnet. Now your sonnet is going to become something new. But if you didn't like it and you want to try something else, that's also a-okay. As I said, there's no right or wrong there. Okay, folks, if we can finish up. What we're writing, the last thoughts. We have about 30 more minutes and I still have one more prompt and one more. Time. So, if anyway, maybe we can have one person, anyone want to share? Anyone like what they just did? Yeah.
I don't have the compliment at the end, but. Inside my car is where I often lie, and sorrows from the world be too much. And I can't do enough, though I hard try. Sometimes all I can offer is touch. 2020 was very drear and long. To fill with alcohol and colored masks. A dirge contrasted with a bird song. Apart together, our collective task. I lost a patient every month that year. Sometimes someone I'd known and slowly grieved. But often people that were very dear. And each day afterward, I cried.
Thank you for that. And what was the, thank you for sharing that and talk about a difficult subject and, but you know what, you know, again, that beauty and the difficult kind of coming to like your language, you know, the dirge that it was just beautiful. Is there anything you want to share about how that was to write that and how the form was helping you?
When I write, I would do a lot with syllables anyway. That kind of just, it was interesting kind of trying to get the I am, but meter with most of that too. That was just kind of figure out how to rephrase things. I liked the structure to kind of play with them.
I noticed that the rhyming, I liked how some of the phrasing came through because of the rhyme. I forgot which one of the lines, but I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, you know, like you kind of played a little bit of syntax to get that. Which is one of the reasons Shakespeare's people are like, why does Shakespeare write like that? It's like people get to think about syllables and rhythms. So that's some of the reasons why Shakespeare sounds like that. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. And at the end, if we have time, if people want to share more, we can. So we kind of picked and choose. We picked and chose. Anyway, what's the past tense of choose? Chose. We picked and chose. I don't know. All right. Some rules, but like, what if we totally broke it? So, you know, we started with the images of 3 vases, and I showed a couple of different containers. Now we have this broken vase. What happens to the flower and vase after the break? Do they cease to exist? What is something new that can come from this, from the pieces? Anybody have any thoughts on this? These questions? And the image, anything that's coming to mind? We have to blend. We have to move some. Right, they have to be, they don't, yes, thank you. It can't be stagnant. It can't be, yes.
The flowers turn compost. And the shards of the vase are made into mosaics.
Right? It can be something else. They can, yeah, flowers become compost, thank you for that, and then they go into the earth and then they're growing our vegetables, right? And then we turn that, yes, we turn the vase into a mosaic or to mirror. Carla?
I think we both go on with the idea. One part. So the structure can bring scaffolds up the lawn and then it's gonna be great.
And then there's a moment where you, okay, you can let it go.
Yeah.
And just let yourself be straight. Yeah.
Flowers, they are beautiful for a while.
And yes, Jamie.
Also, I think once the form allows the subject to flourish, so that the form becomes unimportant. Once the form has come to life within the form itself doesn't matter anymore. Right, so kind of like transcending the form.
Yes, I like that. And right here?
Yeah, so you see the broken vase? Will it continue to exist? Yeah, I think it will continue to exist, but in a different form.
it's never gonna be the same. So once it's broken, but you can still put them together. But it's not gonna be the same. It's not the same as the original.
Right. Things have to change. It's a part of life, right? Wonderful. Thank you for those thoughts. I wanted to share this quote. So, Carolyn Forche, if you don't know, she edited this book Against Forgetting, which was all witness poetry from across the world. People who were imprisoned in wars, in civil wars. She also wrote the book Against, A Country Between Us, which was her experiences in El Salvador during the Civil War. She is not Salvadorian, she's a white American woman, but she went down there and wrote about that. And so she's kind of like she's one of the voices of witness poetry and one of the people look to, right? So this is her quote: "Poetry, in order to be the witness of lived experience, of breath, will have to resort to a language more suitable to the time. Extremity, as we have seen, demands new forms or alters older modes for poetic thought. It also breaks from forms and creates forms from these breaks." So, we have been living in extreme times, right, for some few years now. And so I think that this speaks to our current situation. It's like, we can't keep doing the status quo. Like, we can't keep just, saying, oh, Shakespeare and sonnet has to do with this, we have to break out of that, and we have to look for new forms and new language. And that's what we're talking about. Any thoughts on that? Anything?
Experience, lived experience, very physical.
Yeah. When you're in the middle of something extreme, a trauma, you no longer have you are no longer the same, right? You can't go back to who you were. You no longer have that language you had before, and the ordering you had before. You are now a new person and a new experience. And so, yeah.
But then you can make them more safe.
Yeah. And you can grow your vegetables. Yes. Thank you. Cool. Okay. Then here's our last. What new shape can you make? So, here are these free form vases, vases. So don't even, maybe it's not a classic form, maybe it's not a fixed form, maybe it's something all new and free formed and about the subject. Something I like to do are concrete poems, right? So that's a poem that's a shape. So a poem that's the shape of a diamond, a poem that's the shape of a rectangle. I really love seeing poems that are like windows or doors, where the middle part is white and the poem goes around. I think about thresholds and like when we're going through a threshold. So there's all these different ways. So maybe the container is a literal container and a literal shape. And so this is our last poem. Oh, wait here. I don't have a recording of Victoria reading this. So Victoria Chang has a book called Obit, and this book is about her mother's passing and her grief with her mother's passing, and also the grief of watching her father succumb to Alzheimer's. And what you'll notice is every poem is in this form, this concrete form, which is this long rectangle, thin rectangle, and because it's mimicking an obituary. So it's mimicking an obituary, but then also you might think about, when we're thinking about death, and maybe it's also a coffin or something like that, burial ground. And this is also in your packet. Would anybody like to read it for us? This poem at the back. I also, while we're reading, again, think about how this concrete shape is speaking to the words within the container, right? What is the connection there? Okay, this is from Obit. Oh, sure, go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
Chair. My mother's green chair died on August 3rd, 2000. We arranged chairs and rows facing the same direction to represent reverence. In a circle to represent sharing. Staff to represent completion. Hanging from the ceiling to represent art. In front of a desk to represent work. Before my mother died, I rooted off and mailed to my house. Her catalog still comes every day. I imagine her sitting in her chair, flipping through down from more shirt that look the same. I understand now. Only the living change homes. Last week I took my father pants shopping. I heard him quarreling with his mom. He came out of the dressing room with his pants on backwards. Two pockets facing forward like my mother's eye, mocking me as if to say, I told you so. He was angry, pointing and cursing at the chairs that no longer fit. I entered the men's dressing room and picked up all the pants on the floor because one of them had to be my missing father.
Thank you. Again, that's from Obit. Any thoughts on the container and the subject matter, or the language and the words she's using?
And then the pants we put on them. Like the changes, like life and death. Very, interesting. And how she uses physical things in everyday life, like do that for Indiana things.
I also love, you were talking about the repetition. This is also something I think about. Just because this isn't metered, doesn't mean it doesn't have a rhythm. But there are other ways to create rhythm than just meter. The use of repetition creates rhythm. The sounds do that. So yes, thank you for that. And the things. Anything else?
This is very direct language.
Yeah.
I think that we fits very directly. That it's the things so that when you're in a really silly brief, things really slow down. And simple things like chairs have deeper meaning. She captures that.
Thank you. There's attention to shape, right? The
Yeah.
circle,
Yeah.
the arrangement, the shape of the chairs, the arrangement of the chairs, the circle versus the stack. So there's, the shape of the poem is also, there's shapes within the poem. There's this attention to this and what they mean. Okay, so we're running out of time. So this is your last prompt. Take again your material, same thing, but now create a shape with it. So what is the shape? What is a shape that's within what you've been reflecting on, right? I've done a labyrinth, I've done a spiral, I've done a square, there's a rectangle, I talked about a window, you could do a diamond, you could do a raindrop, all different kinds of shapes, you could do a snake. So what is a shape? Write your poem as a shape. Got it? So, when you've been spending some time with it, right, for the last couple of hours. So what's a shape that comes out of the language? They don't always work, but when they work, it's really cool. A wing, a tail. A flower. A cloud. Okay, stop. Okay, finish up what you're working on. So we have about 10 minutes. You know, you only got the most you got on any one prompt was about 7 minutes. So again, no expectation to leave this place having a fully fleshed out, ready to go poem. But the idea is you now have tried the same material or maybe a couple of different materials in a couple of different ways. And what have you learned about your poem? Any thoughts on that? You know, were you able to find maybe a container? Were you able to learn a little bit something more about the material you were reflecting on? Was there any prompt you liked more than another or was easier? Yes, Jackie?
Ryan shared that it was fun writing a shape and she wrote a teardrop for her poem about reading.
Oh, nice. Thank you. A teardrop about reading. I love that.
Yeah, I think this is like the design form of function. So if you know the function of the poem, so if it's, you know, like a sonnet, the function of the sonnet is really this way of emoting beautiful language, honoring something, then that's the right form. But if the form is, I'm taking language and cutting it up into section, that's good for other things. It's a storm.
Yeah.
So form, what's your function of the poem? Helps you choose the form.
Nice. Thank you. Did you have your one? Yes.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful because I learned it's something needed to come out. And so every time we work with a different form, because of
Yeah, good. Yeah, and then it's like, you know, maybe what came from this was one good line. That's still good, right? Or maybe it's just like, oh, I want to explore this more. Yes, any thought, any other, did anybody want to share any of the poems, any of the prompts for today? Anyone want to share anything? Yes. Perfect.
listen to one poem read of love and death in the poet moss. Force my eyes to fountain
release its grief withheld. My therapist has died. Will all my villains return to haunt without her there to protect me? How can I move without the loving mother she claimed to be? She told me to dance away all that bled inside, to hold each part of myself like a child who needed me. Pandora sings, "Oh, happy day," and I dance and sway the way she danced and swayed with me.
Thank you for that. Anyone else like to?
I wrote words like it was one of the eyebrows.
Cool,
And then the last words were like little flash words.
cool.
First line is the length. Length of your eye that you're. The other words, flash of light. God of joy, God, small joy. On flash of sun, sad sun, penetrate your soul, sun. Here's a corner of your both body, live, rinse, wash, salt. Here, jagged match.
Can I see it?
Oh, well. The top.
Yes, love it. Thank you. Anyone else like to share?
I'm not a poet, but
You are today.
I wrote a rainbow, and my rainbow says, bridge not crossed, a bridge too far, a bridge blown up, a bridge no. Be yours, be mine, be there, be blind.
Yeah. I love that. I see that on being sent to somebody next month. Would anyone else like to share? The other way of form, so right now we're just using form to generate, right? We're writing new things. But another thing that's great about form is that it also can help you edit. So like once you have the poem and then you're like, you know what, right now it's really long, 3 line stanzas. What if I make them short, 4-line stanzas? And then you can start saying like, oh, you know what, I don't need that word. I don't need this thing. I don't, and it kind of helps you to see what you can just cut out. So it's another way that form is helpful when you're working on a poem. Any last thoughts? Any last questions? Yes.
I started working with some material that I haven't been wanting to work for a long time, and it's different from the project that I'm working on, but it's, I don't know, it's meaningful a lot, and I feel like the sonnet really spoke to me, and I didn't expect that because I have the same thing about the little thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is the beginning of something, and I'm really grateful.
Yes, thank
So,
you.
so,
Yes, right.
yeah,
Happy to hear that.
yeah.
It's all a process. We can't, I think a lot of, again, the things that make writing hard is that I think a lot of, I know I do this all the time. Oh, it's not pretty. It's like, well, yeah, that takes a while. It doesn't start pretty. It takes a while and this messing around and this playing with it. And then you get a good line. You're like, okay, I got something there. Let me keep going. So yeah, it's a private process. So thank you for saying that. And I appreciate that. Also, thank you for going on this journey with me. This is my first time doing this talk live. These are kind of poems and prompts I've shared asynchronously. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna remember some of these things. So it's a lot different, right? When I just give it on the computer and people can process on their own.
Yeah.
So thank you for, going through this with me. Thank you. And I'm here to
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
What were we taking a photo?
Oh.
Take a.